When a new political power takes over a region, we usually assume they just, bulldoze the local culture and impose their own rules, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
You picture tanks rolling in, flags being swapped out, and the conquerors instantly rewriting the maps.
Right, the classic colonial playbook.
Exactly. But what if the local architecture, the ancient myths, and the literal spatial energy of a place completely flipped that script? What if the land itself forced the colonizers to sit down and negotiate entirely on the locals' terms?
I mean, it sounds like magical realism, but it is a very real, very documented historical
It
phenomenon.
really is.
We are looking at a place that completely refused to be overwritten by empires, choosing instead to just, well, absorb them.
Welcome to today's deep dive. If you're joining us, we are looking at a deeply fascinating research archive titled Ping Shan History and Spatial Energy.
Yeah, and it focuses on Ping Shan, which is this historic area in the Yuen district of Hong Kong.
Right, and what this archive proves is that architecture isn't just about shelter. It is a tool of profound power. We're going to explore how local clans literally weaponized their buildings against nature, how they legally cornered the British Empire using ancient cosmology, and what you can physically experience if you walk through these hidden gems today.
We really have to emphasize that this is a physical tug of war for the people living there. We were looking at specific spaces, pagodas, police stations, temples, that served as the literal staging ground for a centuries-long negotiation.
A negotiation between massive empires and a single local clan, which is
It
wild.
really is wild.
To understand how a local clan even gets to a point where they can stand up to an empire,
Mm.
we have to look at how they initially conquered their own environment, right? So let's go back to the Ming Dynasty.
Okay, let's set the scene.
The Tang clan is facing an existential crisis that threatens to wipe them off the map.
Right. Specifically, we're talking between 1368 and 1398. The Tang clan in Ping Shan is staring down a terrifying population collapse.
Hmm.
By the time they reach their seventh generation in this area, they are down to just 12 male heirs. And to make matters worse, 4 of those 12 had already died young.
Which, for that era, isn't just a sad family statistic. I mean, it's a death sentence for the entire community.
Exactly. In a traditional agricultural society, male heirs are the entire economic and social engine.
Because they have to work the fields.
They maintain the land, yes. And they're the ones who can take the imperial civil service exams to bring wealth and status to the family. Plus, they are essential to keep the ancestral lineage alive. 8 surviving males for an entire clan means they are teetering on the brink of absolute extinction.
So the anxiety is just palpable. Then the 7th-generation ancestor, a man named Tang Yintung, has this vivid, highly dramatic dream.
Oh, this dream is fascinating.
Right. He sees a massive cluster of bright, glowing stars plummeting from the sky, and they all gather directly at the river mouth, just outside their village.
And in that cultural context, you have to understand, a dream like that is an urgent diagnostic tool. They didn't just ignore it.
No, they immediately brought in a Feng Shui master to interpret the landscape.
Yeah, and the master examines the geography and diagnoses a northwest gap.
A northwest gap.
Basically, the physical layout of the mountains and valleys was acting like a funnel. It was channeling harmful energy, referred to as northern clashes, straight into the heart of the village. It was manifesting as floods, bad luck, and dying heirs.
Okay, let's unpack this. They get this diagnosis, but their solution isn't to just pray harder or migrate. They use engineering.
Right.
They are told to build a massive 7-story pagoda right at that river mouth. They aren't building a structure to live in or a fortress to shoot arrows from. They are inserting this massive building into the landscape like a giant acupuncture needle for the earth.
That is a perfect way to describe it.
They are trying to cure the community's deep psychological anxiety about survival by physically blocking the bad energy and gathering the stars to boost their luck in the imperial exams.
And according to the clan's genealogical records, this massive geographical intervention actually worked. Yeah, after they constructed the Tsui Lao Pagoda, the number of male heirs surged to 22. And many of them started passing those notoriously difficult imperial exams, completely altering the clan's trajectory.
Which is just incredible. And for you listening, if you were walking through Ping Shan today, you can still visit this pagoda, though it's a very different sensory experience now.
Definitely a different vibe today.
Right, because massive typhoons over the centuries blew away the upper floors, so it stands at only 3 stories high now. But imagine stepping inside. The space is incredibly claustrophobic. It barely fits 3 people standing shoulder to shoulder.
Yeah, you can feel the cold, rough texture of the green bricks, and you'll notice how the sunlight pours through these tiny, narrow windows. It casts these very distinct diamond-shaped patches of light on the floor.
Oh, wow, that sounds beautiful.
It is. But the most striking thing about standing there today is the concept of inverted vision.
Wait, inverted vision. If they built it right at the river mouth to look over the water and block the floods, what are you actually looking at if you stand in that pagoda today?
You are looking at a literal wall of concrete.
Real?
Yeah. Originally, the pagoda commanded a sweeping view of Deep Bay. But today, it is entirely boxed in by the towering modern high-rises of the Tsui town development,
So it's totally trapped.
completely swallowed by modern urban sprawl. The ancient structure designed to surveil and control the forces of nature is just hidden in the concrete now.
Such a surreal image. And it actually sets up an incredible contrast for our next story. We just saw how a community used architecture defensively against cosmic threats. But what happens when architecture is weaponized against them by a conquering empire?
Yes. This takes us forward to 1899.
Right.
The British Empire has formally taken over the new territories of Hong Kong. But to understand the friction here, you have to understand how the Tang clan views the literal dirt under their feet. To the locals, the geography of Ping Shan isn't just topography. It's a living entity known as a crab formation.
A crab formation. So the mountains form the heavy body of the crab.
Exactly.
A local stream acts as the legs reaching out to the bay, and the nearby hills are the flags and drums.
Right. And when the British authorities arrive, they want to establish administrative dominance. Standard colonial playbook: find the highest ground and build a fort.
So they construct a prominent police station right on top of Crab Hill.
Yes. And to the British, it's just a strategic vantage point. But to the Tang clan, the British have essentially dropped a massive boulder onto the back of their geographical protector.
A big stone crushing the crab.
Exactly. The locals believed this was suffocating the Feng Shui lifeblood of the entire district.
And this grudge stews for a century. Like, they did not let this go.
Not at all. Fast forward to the 1990s, the Hong Kong government is rapidly expanding its new town developments, and they definitely need land. Specifically, they need the Tang clan to agree to move their ancestral graves to make way for development.
Which is politically radioactive. You cannot just bulldoze indigenous graves in the new territories without causing a massive uproar. The clan knows this.
Oh, they definitely know.
They realize they finally hold the leverage.
They do. So they sit down at the negotiating table with the government, and they make an incredible demand. They say, shut down the police station, which at this point was being used as a police training center and dog unit, and give the building entirely back to the clan.
They hold modern municipal development hostage over a century-old cosmological grievance.
Yeah, and the wild part is they win.
That is so crazy.
In 1997, a compromise is reached. The building is returned to become a museum, but my absolute favorite detail is the symbolic Feng Shui compensation.
All right, the roof.
Yes. For decades, the roof of the police station had been painted red. In local symbolism, a red crab is a cooked crab.
So it's a dead crab.
Exactly. It's dead. As part of the official settlement, the government actually agreed to repaint the roof green, symbolizing a living, breathing crab. They essentially returned the landscape to life. What's fascinating here is how incredibly rare this dynamic is. You have the bureaucratic machinery of a colonial administration being forced to sit at a table with Han Chinese Feng Shui logic and strike a legally binding deal on those exact terms.
Empires do not usually adjust their infrastructure to appease local cosmology.
No, they don't. It completely upends how we think about dominance.
And for you visiting today, it's now the Ping Shan Tang Clan Gallery. The history is incredibly physical. To reach the museum, you have to hike up a severely steep incline.
And that climb is crucial to the experience. As your legs burn walking up that hill, you begin to understand the psychological weight of surveillance. When you finally reach the top and look down at the sweeping roofs of the ancestral halls below, you feel exactly how imposing that British vantage point was. You are physically occupying the shoes of the colonizer, looking down at the people who, a century later, forced them to paint their roof green.
It makes the friction of history so tangible. Now, the police station represents the bureaucratic, administrative side of colonization. But there was also a visceral, bloody, physical resistance.
Very bloody.
Let's look at where the memory of that violence is housed. The Tat Tak Communal Hall.
Right, so Tat Tak was originally built in 1857. It started as a functional community space, a place to manage local markets and station village guards.
Just normal village life stuff.
Exactly. But when the British arrived in 1899, it transformed into the central command for the Six-Day War, which was an armed, desperate uprising by the local villagers against the takeover.
And for a very long time, the official British narrative brushed this off, claiming casualties were incredibly light. But modern historical scholars have dug into this, and they estimate that nearly 500 local fighters died during those 6 days of resistance.
It was essentially a massacre, and for a society deeply anchored in Confucian ancestor worship, 500 sudden, violent deaths create a profound spiritual crisis.
How do you even process that trauma?
Well, decades later, in 1938, the Klan embedded a stone monument directly into the interior wall of the communal hall. It listed over 170 names of the fallen, including 11 women.
Which is a profound act. They're taking this chaotic, violent trauma and formally integrating it into the honorable, highly structured practice of ancestor worship.
Right, they gave those lost lives a permanent, sacred home.
Here's where it gets really interesting, though. The physical fate of this building perfectly mirrors how uncomfortable histories are treated.
Oh, this part is so tragic.
In the 1980s, modern town planning swept into the area. To build new developments, engineers diverted rivers and filled in land, which inadvertently raised the surrounding ground level.
Tat Communal Hall suddenly became the bottom of a geographic bowl.
The rainwater and groundwater had nowhere to go. So this sacred historical hall, holding the monument to 500 dead fighters, began to flood.
Wow.
For decades, it sat completely abandoned, slowly decaying in deep, stagnant, muddy water.
The names of the fallen were literally drowning. It is the most striking, devastating physical metaphor for how inconvenient historical memories are submerged and abandoned by modernization.
Thankfully, it was saved and fully restored in 2013. But if you visit Tatop today, you can still perceive the echoes of that trauma. You just have to look closely at the original brick walls.
You can see the distinct faded watermarks cutting across the masonry, right? Marking exactly how high that stagnant water sat for decades. Yes. And if you stand quietly in the courtyard, you can almost catch a phantom smell of perpetual dampness. It feels exactly like a memory container that was trapped underwater, almost lost forever, and then painstakingly dragged back to the surface.
It gives you absolute chills. Now, Tatok was a site of open, armed rebellion. But just down the road, there was a much quieter, bureaucratic hijacking of space that was arguably just as profound.
Yeah, let's talk about the Kunting Study Hall and the Shu Hin Guest House.
These two structures were built right next to each other in the 1870s, right? The Kunting Study Hall was a disciplined, austere space built strictly to educate local boys, preparing them for those vital imperial exams we discussed earlier.
Right, highly focused on academic success.
And connected to it on the second floor was Shu Hin, an incredibly lavish, highly decorated guest house meant to host visiting scholars and VIPs. Local lore insists that powerful figures like Hong Kong Governor Clementi and the wealthy magnate Sir Robert Hotung were hosted there.
It was essentially the intellectual and social heartbeat of the Klan's future. But during the 1899 takeover, the British military didn't just build a police station on the hill.
No, they did.
They also marched right into this sacred educational space and requisitioned it. Without changing a single brick, they instantly transformed a study hall for Confucian texts into a temporary police station and a colonial land office. If we connect this to the bigger picture, the irony is just staggering. A space meticulously designed and funded to train local youths to serve the Chinese Empire is flipped overnight. It becomes the exact beachhead used by the British to administer colonial rule over those same youths.
It's basically a hostile corporate takeover of a cultural institution. And for those of you visiting today, there is a specific architectural feature you really have to walk through. Go to the second floor and find the physical corridor that connects the Kunting Study Hall to the Shu Hin Guest House.
That corridor is an absolute masterpiece of tension. On one side, you have the simple, rigid, austere architecture of study and discipline. On the other side, you step into this world of luxurious carved wood, elaborate murals, and high-status hosting.
That short hallway is a literal stitched-in space. It is the exact physical transitional boundary between local education and external governance, between rigid discipline and lavish wealth. Walking across it feels like balancing on a tightrope between two colliding worlds.
It's the perfect physical manifestation of the district's history, which leads us to an entirely different kind of space. We've talked about how physical buildings are negotiated, flooded, and repurposed.
Right.
But what about the invisible narratives? What about the gods that govern the district?
Right. Let's dive into the Young Hao Temple.
This temple is dedicated to a deity known as Hao Wang. In Ping Shan, it is absolute foundational local lore that Hao Wang is the deification of a historical figure named Yang Liangji. He was a fiercely brave Southern Song dynasty general who, according to local belief, died a heroic, tragic death in the region while protecting the fleeing child emperor from invading Mongol forces.
It's the ultimate narrative of loyalty and sacrifice. I mean, it's cinematic.
Exactly. And this story is the bedrock of the new territory's identity. The local clans view themselves as loyalists, the spiritual descendants of this noble history. But the research archive reveals a massive contradiction.
A contradiction.
Yeah, a genealogical record from the Yang clan over in Kinmen, Taiwan, strongly suggests that General Yang Liangji never even set foot in Hong Kong.
Wait, really? He was never there?
The Kinmen records indicate he got separated from the fleeing emperor much earlier, ended up in Kinmen, lived out his life quietly, and died there.
Wait, so they just assigned a famous, politically useful historical figure to their local god to boost their own historical credibility?
It certainly appears that way. The primary proof that tied the heroic general to Hong Kong was a stone tablet carved in 1917 by a Qing dynasty scholar.
Ah, so it was pretty late to the game.
Very late. Modern historians look at that tablet and conclude it wasn't a recording of history. It was a highly creative, deliberate re-engineering of a myth. The community needed a stronger, more noble origin story to maintain their status under shifting political regimes, so they essentially grafted a celebrity general to be their local protector.
That is brilliant narrative branding, honestly. And the vibe of this temple today perfectly contrasts that grand imperial myth. If you go to the Young Hao Temple, it is completely different from the massive, sweeping ancestral halls.
Yeah, it is incredibly intimate. It doesn't feel like a cold monument. It feels domestic, almost like a living room for the divine.
Yes, if you look up at the ceiling, the wooden beams are this deep, dark, rich brown. But that isn't paint or lacquer. That coloration comes from centuries of incense smoke, slowly staining the wood day after day, prayer after prayer.
Wow.
And the archive notes a beautifully tender local practice. Whenever there is construction or renovation happening nearby, the locals wrap the statues of the gods entirely in red paper.
They do it to shield the deities from the disturbance, the noise, and the dust of the construction. It reveals a level of deep, personal care and relationship with the divine that goes far beyond just using a god for political leverage.
It really does. Okay, we've covered a lot of ground. We've looked at falling stars triggering pagodas, painted roofs, saving ancestral graves, flooded monuments, hijacked study halls, and strategically relocated historical generals. So what does this all mean? How does the archive tie all of this together?
The archive introduces a fascinating concept to explain all of this. They call it geomantic regime legitimation syndrome.
Okay, that is an academic mouthful. Break down exactly what that means.
Let's split it up. Geomantic refers to divination by earth, basically the logic of Feng Shui, the spatial energy of the land.
Okay, got it.
Regime legitimation is how a ruling power proves it has the right to rule. Put it together, and it means that in Ping Shan, foreign power never wins purely by force. Whether it was the Ming dynasty bureaucracy, the sprawling Qing Empire, or the massive military machinery of the British Empire, every single external power that tried to plant its flag here eventually realized that guns and decrees weren't enough. They had to bow to the local spatial and spiritual grammar.
So they ultimately had to play by Ping Shan's rules to survive there.
Precisely. They couldn't just build wherever they wanted. They had to negotiate with the Feng Shui of a crab. They had to paint their colonial roofs green. They had to physically occupy existing ancestral spaces to project authority.
Wow.
And they had to adopt local loyalist myths just to be seen as legitimate in the eyes of the people. The land and the culture absorbed the conquerors, not the other way around.
And what's wild is that this isn't just dusty history. The archive highlights that this exact same energy is alive and well right now. As recently as 2021, the modern government attempted to build a light housing development near the Ping Shan Heritage Trail. And how did the clan respond? They literally blocked the trail.
And they cited the exact same centuries-old logic. You cannot alter the land without the clan's cosmological consent. The bureaucratic government of the 21st century ran headfirst into the exact same invisible, impenetrable wall that the British Empire hit in 1899.
It is incredible how the past is never really past. It's just lying dormant in the soil, waiting to be triggered.
This raises an important question about how we fundamentally view history. We are taught to think of history as a linear timeline of who conquered whom, whose flag is on the pole. But Ping Shan shows us that true power doesn't always come from the barrel of a gun or a governor's signature.
Right.
True power is deeply embedded in the soil, in the architecture, and in the stubborn, unwavering stories a community refuses to stop telling about itself.
It is the ultimate, unbreakable home field advantage. We want to thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive today. We've explored some incredible, complex terrain, but we want to leave you with a final, lingering thought to ponder as you go about your day.
Yeah, think about your own city. Think about the streets you commute down every single day.
What are the invisible Feng Shui or unspoken spatial rules that govern your hometown? What are the unwritten boundaries or sacred spaces that everyone respects without even knowing exactly why? And the next time you look at your city's skyline, ask yourself, who really holds the power? Is it the politicians and developers who drop those shiny new skyscrapers from above? Or is it the locals who control the stories, the myths, and the memories stubbornly embedded in the soil beneath them?